7:15. Sun's up. Beautiful day on the way.
Warm and sunny conditions today in Sydney, 17 in the city and 18 in the west. Seas will be slight on a low swell. So get out of bed, you lot. Get into your Vegemite and off to work. News in 5 minutes.
In, what have we got? London 24 and clear, Los Angeles 42 degrees and... What? 42 in Los Angeles.
All city-bound traffic approaches to the bridge, back to Falcon Street at the moment.
Touring information.
I'm having a breakdown. But don't bother calling an RMA. You're not a member.
2 lanes of Old Windsor Road are closed due to an accident. I'd like now to tell you about modular pools. Now, if you feel that your little boy Joe is getting belted around, well, get him along to someone who'll teach him how to have a few well-placed karate chops or punch the mug in the mouth, as we would say at Moorba Junction High School. Now, I'd like to...
Bankstown Airport closed by fog.
Pick up that wrapper or I'll break your left arm.
I didn't hear that.
Do the right thing.
I didn't hear that either. The New South Wales Government litter reduction campaign.
How do you explain the feel of a country like Australia? A country that's so different. You can't explain it. You can only experience it. Experience it through the people themselves. Most Australians may live in the cities, but their hearts belong in the bush.
How you are being targeted in a marketing blitz as the banks brawl for your dollars.
Captain, good morning. Jeremy Cordo is my name.
Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
Sir, I thought I would ring you and welcome you to Australia.
There are some things don't need to be put into words. There are some things you feel you can't value their worth. There are things that you change. Nothing big, just a few. Most things you'd leave, 'cause they're ours through and through. Like singing Matilda, you can keep all the rest. They don't come from the heart, and they don't pass the test. Now some can explain it, but I never could. I just know there's a reason for feeling this good. How do you feel under clear southern skies? Does to hear Ozzy sing bring a tear to your eye? How do you feel when you call this land home? Does the song in your heart never leave you alone?
Home to most Australians is the bush, even though we don't often go there. A land of stark contrasts on a huge scale, still full of surprises and secrets. If there's one thing that's clear as the air, it's the space. You could fit Texas 6 times into the state of Western Australia, no trouble. Perth to Sydney, it's like Lisbon to Moscow, and not so cold. Down under, an Englishman called it 100 years ago. Just the place to dump convicts in the hope they might fall off into space. Topsy-turvy land where everything's upside down, where the birds laugh and trees shed their bark instead of their leaves. The island continent where everyone's gone to the beach. Australia is still the world's best kept secret, even to most Australians. But if there's one thing everyone knows, it's Bondi Beach. This is Greedy Smith, lead singer with Mental as Anything.
Well, you might ask me what I'm doing here. Well, I live over there on the other side of the beach. It's a sunny day and it's a day off. I play in a rock group that craves leisure, and all of these bums behind me on the beach do about as much work as I'd like to do. And that's why I play in a group, because in Australia, when I started playing in a group, the publicans in pubs were losing money to leagues clubs, people with poker machines, and they decided that they could put a few bands on in these pubs and get people to drink. So the whole Australian music industry, the rebirth, the overseas interest, is all based upon publicans wanting to sell drink to young people. So that bands tend to be playing to drunks a lot more. Basically, Bondi Beach and music are very, well, you can't separate them really, because Bondi is full of New Zealanders, let's face it. And I play in a band with 2 New Zealanders. And so you're looking at a beach full of, well, probably 60% of the people on that beach, probably rock musicians, and the rest of them are having a rest. Oh, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. In Australia, we owe a lot to the Flying Doctor and the wireless. Thanks to radio stations and things like that, even mugs like us can get heard in places like Oodnadatta, Galargambone and Grong. And it's a treat to actually be driving through the middle of the Hay Plain and hear yourself on the radio, because you're dodging kangaroos and squash rabbits.
Rabbits and roos, snakes and lizards, we've got the lot. They're just trying to scratch a living too. Out there, out back. You've got to forget your city clocks, let all your hassles go. You can arrange your route to run 500 miles between post offices if you don't want the bills to catch up with you. But even the toughest will recognise that there's something that gets you, something that gives you a lift. The ignorant folk who live in the smoke have never been anywhere. The country bloke they see as a joke, or else as a brainless lair. Never have went on adventure bent where the death adder croons his song, and the possum relates a yarn to his mates in the winter when nights are long. Never have seen the parrots green driving their carriage gay. Never been west of Strathfield. Never been far away. Time of the year there's something for everyone. The country's so big. When it's hot, dry summer in the south, it's the wet season up north. And when it's clear and warm in Darwin and Broome, that's when the snowy mountains live up to their name. Then the snows melt, the rivers flow down the ranges to the lush grazing land where Aline Mitchell lives. Aline Mitchell hasn't lost a minute in her 70-odd years. Olympic skier, writer, cattlewoman. You'd have to be flat out like a lizard drinking to keep up with her.
The first time I ever went onto the Kosciuszko Mountains, G-High was full of fog when we woke up very early in the morning and we rode up the Hannell Spur. Well, we must have ridden more than 4,000 feet up before we got out of that fog. These hills looked like little islands sticking up. But for a first entry to the Snowy Mountains, it was unbelievable. Marvellous. Somebody said to me the other day, when we were climbing up the South Ram's Head and enjoying it like crazy, she said, you know, after all, this is a birthday present, isn't it? And I guess it is. It's what's there when you're born. How many Australians see this sort of life? I really don't think there's a very high proportion now, but it seems to me that they still like to think that this is Australia, this is the life, and this is what bred them. And there are fewer and fewer people doing it, I think, in a way. I really love it all, everything. Everything I see when I'm out and just wandering along behind the cattle or cursing them when they go wrong. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a rich and beautiful life.
You just can't get away from the Barrier Reef. Not that you'd want to. It's that big, it's the only living thing an astronaut can see from space. But most people want a closer look than that. They usually stay on one of the islands. But you can't just walk off the beach and onto the reef. Sometimes you have to go out 50 miles or more. And even when you get there, the best views are still underwater. And your goggles leak and you left your flippers behind. One man had a better idea. Doug Tarker is an engineer who designed what he calls the Yellow Submarine. It's anchored beside the reef, a couple of hours out of Townsville by high-speed catamaran.
The pleasing thing about the submarine is that you can have little children, elderly people. We had people out here from 84 to 96 years old that would never see the reef otherwise. And this has opened up a whole new underwater scene for a lot of people. We had 15 paraplegics flown from Perth last year, and we brought them out and they had a look at the... We were able to get them into the submarine and had a look at the reef, and they were really excited about the whole thing. That gave me a lot of pleasure. My thing was coral. I've been dealing with coral or observing coral now for 30-odd years. I was going to the Argentine and I came through Townsville, and after a few days I went to Magnetic Island and run into one of Jacques Cousteau's men, and I borrowed his equipment, had a look underwater, and I've been here ever since.
Gosh.
I went in a glass-bottom boat many years ago, and I was very disappointed at what I saw, and I thought there's got to be a better way. I love driving the submarine around and giving people an eyeball-to-eyeball look at the coral polyps. We get pretty close at times. The greatest danger to the barrier reef is from man and pollution. You know, if we pollute the waters, it will kill the microscopic sea life and then the reef is finished. I'm afraid that if I saw an oil rig, I'd be the first to bomb it. But as far as people are concerned, coming out to the reef, they pick up bits and pieces here and there, that will not affect it, because a cyclone will do more damage than the thousands of people on the reef. And yet, within 2 or 3 years, it's flourishing and back to normal. I feel really great. I think that the comments from the people, the pleasure that I've given them really makes makes me feel very satisfied.
Beauty, man. Of course, you don't have to take nature sitting down. You can make your approach as rugged as you like. Get a backpack and use your feet. Go bushwalking.
A lot of people who walk for a single objective of achieving the summit of some mountain or to arrive at a certain place. For me, it's the passing through the bush, the experience of just being part of it.
Bob Graham and Helen G were leaders in the campaign to save the Franklin River in Tasmania. They live on a farm on the east coast, really determined to be self-sufficient.
I grew up in the country and I knew that I would never have children anywhere else. For a long time I was living in the city and it just didn't enter my head to have children in that environment. And as far as their education, I think a large part of it will be out on the farm and in the bush. I'm a qualified teacher so that I can teach them here or supervise correspondence, but school to me is a secondary consideration. And they'll learn practical skills and they'll go to school when and if they want to. I think the school of life is the best school, and giving them good health is a very important thing too.
I think there's an increasing need amongst city and townspeople to get into the bush, whether it be just the rural scene or the beach or the national parks or right into the wilderness. And more people are going to the wilderness. I think they feel an inbuilt need to get back in touch with nature, and that's great for them, but unfortunately it's hard on the wilderness. And here in Tasmania we're fortunate in having a large area of wilderness, and all of Australia and part of the world wants it and is using it, and we must recognise this and cater for them and preserve a large enough area of it to be intact as wilderness for the future.
Yes, got some butter in it.
If wilderness isn't your cup of billy tea, flip round the radio dial on a Saturday morning, pile the kids in the station wagon, and forget trimming the edges of your lawn.
On the ball this morning. Acres of events, men's events, women's events, children's events.
I've never been a shearer, never seen a shearing shed, and I don't suppose I'd recognise a sheep. Now I've never been a drover, bringing dusty cattle over, or died of thirst beside a dried up creek. I've never been a digger on a worked out worthless claim, or rowdy rouseabout or jackaroo. Never drove a bullock dray, never cut a field of cane, but I'm bloody well Australian through and through. My oath I am. I'm bloody well Australian through and through. Now I've never boiled a billy by a bloody billabong. There's better ways than that, your days to spend. No one humps their swag no more. What a flaming bloody bore when you can take off in the hold in each weekend. Now there's a mighty wagon, it's a ripper of a car, designed for our conditions, no, it's true. It's made by General Motors, though you'd hardly even notice, cause it's bloody well Australian through and through. My oath it is. It's bloody well Australian through and through. Good, mate.
Can we have a beer?
The early pioneers weren't stupid. They made sure that all the big cities were on the beach. In no time, you can be on your own, out in the water. Australians have dominated world surfing for years. Nat Young, Mark Richards, Tom Carroll. What champions. What boys. What confidence. It's moments like these you need minties. Or a couple of mates will do.
Here they are, ready and waiting in the grand old traditions of the Surf Life-Saving Club. Eyes peeled for a body needing attention. Discipline and vigilance on the beach. How well they cover the waterfront. Like the Anzacs at Gallipoli, they carry forward their proud traditions. A spectator accidentally spots our drowning hero. Now look at the product of years of discipline and training. The first wave of rescuers is mown down. The second wave of stalwarts storms out. Will they get there in time? Make way for the surf boat, the Australian Lifesavers' final solution. Here comes the champion boat. It's up and over. Its lean beauty has triumphed. This is unbelievable. But all is not lost. The junior club members save the day. And the victim gets a hero's reward.
It's all like something out of the 1950s. The macho male, clean, upright, healthy. Only the bikinis and the surfboards are shorter now. The Iron Man of the 80s hasn't altered a bit from the He-Man of the 50s. He just dived right under the shock waves of feminism, student revolt, social reform and all that, and came up bronzed and blue-eyed just the same as ever. And his scene, the beach scene, is like an old double feature at the drive-in.
My boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble. My boyfriend, when you see him coming, better cut out on the double. My boyfriend's back. Yeah, he knows that you've been trying, and he knows that you've been lying. He's been gone for such a long time.
overseas visitors pretend they come to Australia for the kangaroos and koalas. But if the truth be known, it's another species that attracts the tourists. His colouring, bronze, blonde, blue-eyed. His habitat, the beach. His breed, the Aussie male. But to get really close requires camouflage gear. To find a healthy specimen, you've got to know what to look for. Pie wrapper, stubbies, Chico roll, T-shirt, zinc cream, and on Saturday morning, a hangover. Having grown up on the beach, I know what to look for. We're on the right trail.
It's 10 years since Kathy Lett co-wrote Puberty Blues, when she was really into the teenage beach scene herself. The story of boy meets girl may never change much, but the details and slang always do.
Bottle fatigue, huh?
Yeah.
I don't reckon we really speak English here. We speak Australian. I mean, most guys I know have 3 grunt vocabularies. Nah, dunno, and That's about it, right?
Yeah.
What other slang words do we use?
Well, you call young guys grommets around the beaches and anywhere really, grommets. We call our mums mully grubbers.
So if you saw me walking down the street, what would you say?
I'd probably try and lob on you or talk to you or something.
He likes me. Am I a grommet?
Yeah, you're a bit old for a grommet. Just over a grommet, I think.
OK, well, if you're giving me a mark on the spunk rating, what would I be?
Well, maybe a bit of work to do, but I'd probably give you about a 6.
That's not bad. All right, well, we better do some working out.
Yeah, better do something.
All right, come on.
All right, let's go.
So, Guy, tell me about the Australian male. I mean, is he really as macho as his image?
I think the Australian male's pretty macho, but they're not as bad as people think, though.
I think they might be closet romantics. What do you reckon?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Are you affectionate?
It depends. Sometimes I can find affection after a few beers.
What was the last book you read?
Last book I read? I don't read books, really.
There's lots to perv on, right? What do you think about topless beaches?
Well, topless beaches in Australia is getting bigger and bigger all the time, so I love it.
Good perv, huh?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, perving. Now, that's something that the overseas visitor has to master.
Yeah.
It's a national pastime, perving. Yep. How do you do it?
Well, you need sunglasses.
Yeah.
Tinted sunglasses.
Yeah.
A pair of binoculars for the long distance stuff, and also you need quick reactions so you don't get caught.
So give me an example how you perv.
Well, you got to get your sunglasses on like this and take a big look and sort of not get caught out.
You're a surf lifesaver, aren't you, Guy?
Yes.
Have you ever saved lives, really and truly?
Yeah, I save lives all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation?
Yeah,
or
mouth-to-mouth, yeah.
I think I need some more in-depth research on that. How's the spunk rating now?
Oh, it's getting higher all the time.
Hey!
6 1/4.
Maybe the Aussie male doesn't change any more than the beach he lies on. But just behind these beaches, especially in Queensland, lies a very different world. A world so exotic, so rich, that early explorers like Banfield felt strangely moved to record their thoughts. The bright ochre of the fungus spreads horizontal amongst the vertical greens. In the gloomy gullies are slender-shafted palms and tree ferns, while ferns and mosses cover the soil with living tapestry. Huge cables of vines trail from tree to tree, hanging in loops and knots and festoons. A subdued fugue of chirps and whistles, soft, continuous, and quite distinct from the cheerful notes and calls, completes a circle of sound. Wheresoever he stands, the listener is in the centre of ripples of melody which blend with the silence. You could fancy you heard in the throbbing stillness the movements of the fairy-like wings, a faint, unending hum. From the odorous jungle they came, flitting in gay inconsequence, yet full of the power and pain of the moment. The great thing about Australia is that there's so much room to try out new ideas. One of them was the Australian Marina, and it's lined jackets and pockets here for 150 years. You may have to look around for a while for the right place, but if you're like South Australian winemakers Adam Wynne and his father David, you'll find it.
The search to find Mount Adam as an area to plant grapes is the most detailed search for a grape growing area ever undertaken in Australia. We searched in a light plane over lots of Australia and then went back in the car and checked it from the ground. When we found Mount Adam, there wasn't any land for sale. We had to go around and talk to different farmers and persuade them to sell us the land. And it's one of the great things about being a grape grower in Australia, is that you can go somewhere where nobody else has gone before and hopefully do something really special. I think I could say confidently, in terms of quality, that in Australia we drink the best wine in the world for the price. The very best wine in the world may be produced in some cases in places like France, but these wines are not consumed in their country of origin. You'll find that in France most of their best wine is exported because they can't afford to consume it themselves. So we have in Australia a very lucky situation of the medium range is really excellent. What we have to strive for now in Australia, I suppose, is the great heights. And we are capable of it, Australia. We have the climate, we have the expertise, and there are people dedicated enough. And also, I think there's the great aspect that you can pioneer in this country, and that Australia is still a country where you can do things which haven't been done before. You can plant grapes in areas which haven't been planted before. The ripeness ones here will probably be just about right for making the champagne by Tuesday. And then we'll probably be picking Monday or Tuesday. And on Monday, before we start, I'll get you to do a split sample. We'll sample up the top and then down the bottom. Another aspect of Mount Adam is our labelling. The Mount Adam label is quite distinctive for Australia. We've tried to convey a separateness, a new beginning, if you like, something quite different, and at the same time convey some of the beauty of this place, which is why we have the wedge-tailed eagle on the label, and if you're lucky you'll probably see one hovering around here tomorrow.
The old wedgie is a stay-at-home, and if you want to see him, you have to go to his country. Claudio Alcorso came all the way from Italy to Tasmania and successfully built his nest on the banks of the Derwent. Homesick for only one thing.
When we built the house, when we settled here, I looked at the environment. All the hills that go up the Derwent had something missing to my eyes. And what was missing were the vineyards. And you find generally that the great table wines are made in small quantities by small enterprises. And we see quite a number of small, specialized vineyards emerging in some of the cooler areas of Victoria, here in Tasmania. I think it's all part of this process towards quality. A great table wine takes infinite care. This ties up also to our approach to the arts. I've been for many years on the executive committee of the board of the Elizabethan Theatre Trust, and it was Dr. Coombs, a man I have a great admiration for, a really great Australian, who asked me to put together the Australian Opera to be ready to open the Sydney Opera House. It was really a dream that I would not have dared to dream when I arrived here. When you looked at Bennelong Point and the tram depot that was there, and to see that marvelous building go up, and let alone that I, a foreigner, would have the privilege of being the first chairman of this identifiable Australian company, which, again, same approach, quality, detail, and we found that there was talent. It's a continuous source of faith, if you like, that we have talent in the country, because with encouragement, good quality things are coming up all the time. As I started to look at the country, I started to love it. I don't think it's particularly difficult for an Italian, because many of the Mediterranean characteristics here, the clear space, the clear air, the possibility of living outside. I think Australia is more tuned to Mediterranean influences than to Anglo-Saxon influences. We found, when we bought the land, that there are yards deep of shells. The old people must have been camping here in peace, in perfect harmony with the environment for centuries. And I find that important. It's a continuity, it's love even, and it's acceptance that other human beings had been here before us in harmony with their environment, in love with their environment.
Beyond the Black Stump, Backaburk, the Never Never, there was a time when distance and isolation could make life tough, and Tasmania, across the wild seas and foul weather of the Bass Strait, really suffered. But now it's turned around, and isolation can be a bonus.
Well, I think the mainland sees Tasmania as like the end of the earth. You know, I think maybe people are a little bit fresher with their ideas down here, and it's not such a rat race. So therefore people have a little more time to be a bit more creative and to relax a little bit more about sort of finding the next buck.
Annie Smith designs clothes that are distinctively Australian. Once a week, she loads her truck and drives 200 kilometres to Hobart. She's just one of the many enterprising folk who each Saturday, rain or shine, make the Salamanca markets the centre of activity.
That's where I make this truck look like a person.
Sweet juicy apples, we've got the best. All our own organically grown. You can taste the difference.
Australians are reckoned to be pretty easygoing, but try scratching a Tasmanian and you'll soon find a strong political opinion. States' rights, hydroelectricity, conservation.
There's quite a history of politics down here. Norm Sanders is very colourful and is very interesting, and I think it's really nice to sort of see senators down at the markets amongst the people, really, you know, the raw grit. This morning we've just spent a lot of money buying one of his stoves. So he's just managed to sell us something, and he keeps his stove business going. I don't know all about him, but I think he's with the nuclear disarmament group.
Well, this is the Sanders Hot Prospect stove, and it started out as a design exercise for me, because I couldn't find a wood burner that I wanted to buy. So I built one about 4 years ago, and we've now built 209 of them, and I shipped them all the way from Brisbane to Perth to the mud brick triangle of Victoria, and it's a great little export industry for Tasmania.
Is this your only job?
No, I am also a senator in the Australian Parliament, but this is the job that's kept me alive since I got out of the Tasmanian Parliament, because I stepped on the udders of so many sacred cows in Tasmania, I simply couldn't get a job, so I had to go to work for myself. And now all this enterprise is paid off, and the people of Tasmania have elected me to represent them in the federal parliament. So there you are.
It's lovely. I'm really realising that I really enjoy being in Tassie now. It's so easy, and I just think Tassie's got everything.
What Tassie has got that she shares with the mainland is the Southern Ocean. It rolls in straight from Antarctica onto the 90-mile beach of the Coorong in South Australia, a thin lake that links up with the mouth of the Murray River.
I still remember when I saw it for the very first time in 1962, and I was wondering where all that water came from. I couldn't sort of picture it, because it was water that seemed to be everywhere and land beyond, but I had no idea whether it was an island or a peninsula. And as an ex-Dutchman, the sound of an ocean has a special call because we feel very close to the sea, and whenever we can hear the ocean, we'll feel as if we're in familiar country. And seeing all this water and the water birds, I realized it was a fantastic place. And now as a ranger, living here and talking to people, that is what's happening to a lot of people. People see it, but at that time they're too busy to stop. They're on their way from A to B, and but some of them promise themselves to come back, and of course more and more are doing this now. And that is the magic of the Coorong, I think.
It's not every day a wounded pelican lobs onto your patch, but Herman Backer isn't surprised.
We assumed that he'd flown into a power line and hurt his wing very badly. It's very swollen, and he can't move it. And it's feeling very warm here, so we're going to take it to the vet this afternoon, because if it's not broken, there's a chance that he might be able to set it and we can save the bird. This is sentimental reasons. There are so many pelicans in the Coorong, but if you can save another bird, well, that will be fine. And that is, you know, what the people expect from us when they care and bring a bird to us. The Coorong it can be a friendly place, and it can also be a very awesome place. And then there is perhaps the frightening aspect of the Coorong. When you've taken on too much, you've gone too far in your canoe, and you still got to make it home, and she's getting white water. The adrenaline starts to flow, you're getting worried, and when you finally get home, you feel good. You're glad to be home, and that you've had that experience out there. So I suppose it's the changeability of it. And it attracts not only just me, but scores, hundreds of other people. Even just an ordinary taxi driver from Adelaide that comes to the Coorong, pretends he's a duck hunter, sits there with his decoys, and he's not getting any ducks, but he sits there just by himself, away from people. And that's what it's all about.
Broome used to be the pearling capital of the world, and the luggers carried crews of every race and colour. What we now have is Australia's oldest multiracial town.
Luggers are in on the full tide, and the gambling house is back.
When I was about 13 through to 16, I used to go and sit on a beach with a guitar, and I used to get into a certain space and just play away, you know.
Dad, we're gonna rag a little Johnny tonight.
Broome has a special language because of the mixture of races here. I suppose it's a Creole type of language, mixture of Aboriginal, Malayan, Chinese. Well, my family's bloodlines are Filipino, white, European, and Aboriginal, and a touch of Spanish, I think. And that's a very common mixture actually in Broome.
Frangipani starting to bloom, and the blue bone starting to bite. Yeah, Mom, I can just taste your fish soup and rice coming back home to you. Can't act the pace of the city life, soon I'll be dreaming in Broome. Heading out to Blackberry Tree now, got the dust and mud stuck in our hair. Uncle Harry got his Escovia. Auntie Phil, well, she really don't care. Hey, Mom, I can just taste your fish soup and rice coming back home to you. Can't act the pace of the city life, soon I'll be dreaming in Broome under the mango tree. Rather be dreaming in Broome away from Louis, soon I'll be dreaming in Broome.
Broome attracts all sorts of people who visit and then stay. One of the more unusual is a millionaire industrialist who flies in from England 4 times a year to make Broome his temporary headquarters. Alistair McAlpine loves Broome and loves the wildlife of Australia.
I put up some aviaries in my garden, and then like topsy it just grew, and I've got this piece of land, and Then I started with birds, and now I've got buffaloes and camels and bantang cattle and deer and cassowaries and emus. And this is a broga. They're a beautiful crane. This is a very young one. You see these as you get down past Alice Springs, across the Simpson Desert, you get into Queensland. You see flocks of these, 200 or 300 of them at a time. You see flocks of them up here, but you don't see the size of flock, maybe 50 in a flock, something like that. But when you see 200 of those birds and they're running along and just taking off, I mean, they are very spectacular. The parrots are fairly obvious, but I'm building an aviary for waders. Do you know, more waders come in over, more migratory birds come in over this coast than almost anywhere else in the world. There's a colossal migration of birds. They come all the way down from Russia, snipe, wading birds, all sorts of things, come right in over here, thousands and thousands of birds. This is one of the meccas in the world for bird watching. Quite extraordinary. It's the third largest population of migratory birds in the world, and the other two places are somewhere in Brazil and somewhere else where you can't get to see them. A lot of the parrots that I wanted to keep in England, the climate's wrong for it, but apart from anything else, you couldn't get them because they're endangered species and protected, and you can't take them out of Australia. So it seemed reasonably logical to try and keep a few birds here. I came here by accident. I was looking for somewhere to come for the weekend, and I ended up in Broome. It was a wonderful place. I came up here. My wife went on the beach. I didn't like the beach much myself, and went round the town, and I suddenly found a house that said for sale, and I went in and I bought the house, and when we just concluded the transaction, the chap I bought it from said, well, what are you going to do with the cinema? So I said, what do you mean, what am I going to do with the cinema? He said, well, he bought the Sun Pictures as well, so I ended up with a cinema in Broome. So by that time, I've got a substantial commitment here, a house and a cinema. It's the oldest cinema in Australia that's still operating, I think. It runs as a full-time cinema, and it was opened in early 1900s, and still uses the projectors that were made in about 1920. Canvas seats, it's 1/3 covered, 2/3 open, and great big fans that go round at night. It's quite an experience going there, and if you get all the locals in there, and their dogs and children, and hot, balmy night, and good cowboy film, and they get quite carried away. It's wonderful. I think the thing about this part of the countryside is that people don't really want to know where you've come from or where you're going. They're so used to people arriving and leaving. The Australian bush is a frightening place, really. I mean, it's the size of it, the scale of it, and, you know, you see these great emus running across. I mean, wonderful birds, great flightless birds. You think you're back in prehistoric times. It's very powerful countryside, particularly up here when you look at the rock formations. I don't know if you've been to Bungle Bungle and some of these places. I mean, they are sensational.
The best kept secret in Australia isn't Dame Edna's age. It's the Bungle Bungle Ranges. There are no roads to the Bungles. They are lost in the vast distances of the northwest, with Kununurra about 300 kilometres to the north, on the Ord River. Up here, everything is on a giant scale. The Argyle diamond mine is already the largest in the world. The man-made Lake Argyle is 9 times the size of Sydney Harbour, and the state capital is over 1,500 kilometres away, in Perth.
Distance is really part of the excitement of living up here. The veterinary practice, for example, has extended in the time that we've been here from Broome in the west through Fitzroy Crossing, down as far as Alice Springs, over to Mount Isa, through to Borroloola, Darwin, and back to Kununurra. So even now it extends over roughly an area of 200,000 miles. And I would fly 300 to 800 hours a year, and it's nothing for us to go to jobs on stations that are 450, 500 miles away for a day trip. Has she ever shown any sign of coming on again?
David Bradley is the flying vet. He and his assistants run the most extensive practice in the world, covering an area larger than France and Spain combined. Often leaving long before dawn, David flies out over the dramatic landmarks of the McDonnell Ranges, Catherine Gorge and the Kakadu National Park.
And even the arriving home at night is quite spectacular, especially on a moonlit night. And the moon reflects off the river. You can see it 40 or 50 miles at it. It is just superb. Lake Argyle also is illuminated, and it's positively eerie. You can make out the features of the islands and the dam, and then the shimmer of the river down to Kununurra. I don't think I'd live in the north if I couldn't live on the river, because it's such an essential part of it. And really, to realise the potential of this country is to exploit the water, which is an extremely valuable resource that is totally undervalued by all Australians. The crocodiles are part of it as well. We've got crocodiles here, and we've found crocodiles in the garage. We've had ducks taken by crocodiles, but generally they're very timid. I regularly swim out the front of the house, 1,000, 2,000 metres just up and down the river. I think it's fabulous that they're there, that we can see them, and that they're just outside the front door. But one can't afford to be afraid of these things. I mean, it'd be like not going swimming in the surf, because there's sharks in the sea. And it's the same with bringing children up here. Our children have grown up with crocodiles, they've grown up with snakes, they've grown up in cattle yards. Flying an aircraft is second nature to them. Water skiing in the river with crocodiles is second nature to them, but it's also an element of beauty which other children just cannot appreciate.
The Bungle Bungles, 350 million years old, dwarf Ayers Rock and the Olgas. They rise 1,500 feet over the plain in these weird striped domes. Flying through them is one of the greatest experiences Australia can offer. Imagine, a country so vast that it's only 4 or 5 years since the Bungle Bungles became known to more than a handful of locals. Not long ago, a French girl who'd ridden a motorbike around Australia was asked what had impressed her most. "I felt so free," she said, and then had to say it again. "I felt so free."
There are some things don't need to be put into words. There are some things you feel, you can't value their worth. There are things that you'd change, nothing big, just a few. Most things you'd leave, 'cause they're ours through and through. Like singing Matilda, you can keep all the rest. They don't come from the heart, and they don't pass the test. Now some can explain it, but I never could. I just know there's a reason for feeling this good. How do you feel under clear southern skies? Does to hear Ozzy sing bring a tear to your eye? How do you feel when you call this land home? Does the song in your heart never leave you alone? I have found find in the faces of strangers in places that most of us never do more than pass through. A love of this land that can make such demands on the heart, and yet somehow can leave you renewed. We live on the edge of this land we call home. We worship the water, yet somehow we know that deep in the heartland where all of us dwell lie the reasons we're Aussies. It ain't hard to tell. How do you feel under clear southern skies? Does to hear Aussies sing bring a tear to your eye? How do you feel when you call this land home? Does the song in your heart ever leave you alone? Dwell lie the reasons we're Aussies. It ain't hard to tell. How do you feel under clear southern skies? Does to hear Aussies sing bring a tear to your